The hum of the engine was the only thing that felt right. It was a low, steady rumble that vibrated up through the frame of my old Harley, through the seat, and into my bones. It was a language I understood better than anything else these days. After 18 months in the desert, where the world was all sand-colored silence, and then ear-splitting chaos, the simple, honest thrum of my bike was like a hymn. It was the sound of freedom, the sound of coming home. The sun was a warm, heavy blanket on my shoulders. I had my old leather jacket on, the one that smelled like my dad's garage, and 1,000 miles of open road. My hair was too long, whipping around the edges of my helmet, and I probably looked like trouble to anyone who didn't know me. But right then, I didn't care. All I cared about was the next 20 miles. 20 miles to Sarah, 20 miles to my little girl, Lily. I could already see her in my mind, her pigtails bouncing as she ran out the front door, her voice a high-pitched squeal of daddy. Sarah would be right behind her, her hand over her mouth, her eyes shining. That image, that single, perfect image, was what I had held onto through every long night, every tense patrol, every moment I thought I might not make it back. The town of Heavenwood appeared ahead, nestled in a valley like a picture on a postcard. Quaint little storefronts, an old-fashioned clock tower in the town square. It was the last town before my own. I eased back on the throttle, respecting the speed limit. I wasn't looking for any trouble. I just wanted to get through it and be home. That's when I saw the flashing lights in my rearview mirror, red and blue, pulsing, angry. My heart didn't jump, it just sank, a slow, heavy drop into the pit of my stomach. After everything I'd been through, this felt like such a small, stupid thing, but it was a wall between me and home, a wall I didn't have the patience for. I signaled, pulled over to the side of the road, and killed the engine. The sudden silence was jarring. I could hear the birds chirping in the trees, the distant sound of a lawnmower. Normal life. I swung my leg over the bike, pulled off my helmet, and set it on the seat. I ran a hand through my sweaty hair and waited. 2 officers got out of the patrol car. One was older, thick around the middle, with a weary look on his face like he'd seen it all and was tired of it. The other was young, lean, with a buzz cut and that kind of ramrod straight posture that screamed academy fresh and full of piss and vinegar. He was the one who walked up to me, his hand resting casually on the butt of his gun. "License and registration," he said. Not a question, a demand. His eyes roamed over me, taking in the worn leather, the faded jeans, the scuffed boots. He wasn't seeing a man, he was seeing a stereotype. "Evening, officer," I said, keeping my voice level. I've been trained by the best in the world on how to de-escalate, how to show respect even when my insides are screaming. I reached into my jacket's inner pocket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out my wallet. I handed him my license, then opened a small compartment on the bike to get the registration. The young cop, whose name tag read Miller, snatched the papers from my hand. He barely glanced at them before turning his attention to my bike. "This is a nice machine," he said, but it wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. "A little too nice for a guy like you." Maybe. I felt a flash of heat. "I saved up for it," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. It was my dad's before it was mine. The older officer, Davis, had ambled up by now. He stood a few feet back, just watching. Miller ignored my comment. He walked a slow circle around the Harley, his eyes narrowed. "We've had a report of a bike matching this description stolen over in the next county." I couldn't help it. A small, tired laugh escaped my lips. "Officer, with all due respect, this is one of the most popular models Harley ever made. There are probably 100 bikes that match this description within a 50-mile radius." Miller's jaw tightened. He did not like being contradicted. "Are you getting smart with me?" "No, sir," I said, forcing the calm back into my voice. "I'm just stating a fact. My papers are all in order. The VIN on the frame matches the registration. I've owned this bike for 10 years. He stalked back to his patrol car without another word. I watched him go, my hands tingling with a frustration that felt like an electric current. I just wanted to go home. I was so close. I could almost smell the barbecue from my neighbor's yard, almost feel Lily's small arms wrapped around my neck. I looked at Davis, the older cop. He gave me a small, almost apologetic shrug. It did nothing to make me feel better. I waited. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road. 5 minutes stretched into 10. I could hear Miller's voice squawking over the radio. I knew what was happening. He was on a fishing expedition, trying to find something, anything, to justify the stop, finally. He got out of the car, a triumphant smirk on his face. "Well, look at that," he said, walking back towards me. "Your bike has been flagged. Reported stolen 3 weeks ago." The world tilted a little. "That's impossible," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I have the title. It's in my name. I've had it forever." "The computer doesn't lie," Miller said, puffing out his chest. "Looks like we've got ourselves a bike thief." This was it. The moment where things could go very, very wrong. I've seen it happen. A misunderstanding, fueled by ego and adrenaline, spiraling out of control. I took a deep breath, trying to anchor myself. "Officer, there has to be a mistake," I said, speaking slowly and clearly. "I can prove this bike is mine. The title is at my house, not even 20 miles from here. My wife can bring it. Or you can follow me there." "Oh, I bet you'd like that," Miller sneered. "Lead us on a little chase, would you?" "No, I think we'll just impound the bike and take you downtown to sort it out." Impound my bike. My dad's bike. The one thing that felt like mine, that felt like peace. The thought of it sitting in some dusty, greasy lot, handled by strangers, made something snap inside me. But my face remained a mask. My body stayed still. I've had guns pointed at me by men who wanted me dead. I could handle a small-town cop with an ego problem. "You are not taking my bike," I said. My voice was quiet, but it had a new edge to it. The kind of edge my men learned to listen to. Miller took it as a challenge. He stepped closer, getting into my personal space. He was trying to intimidate me. He had no idea who he was dealing with. He had no idea that I had spent the last year and a half in a place where personal space was a luxury you couldn't afford, and intimidation was a game played with much higher stakes. "I think I am," he said, his voice a low growl, "and I think you're going to put your hands behind your back, or my partner and I are going to put you on the ground." I glanced at Davis. He looked uneasy now. He was shifting his weight, his eyes darting from me to Miller. He knew his partner was pushing this too far. I turned my gaze back to Miller. I looked him straight in the eye. "You're making a mistake, officer. The only mistake here was you thinking you could cruise through my town with a stolen motorcycle." He shot back. He reached for his handcuffs. That's when I knew I was out of options. Pleading with him was useless. Reason had left the station. I was about to be arrested, 20 miles from home, on the day of my return from a war zone, for stealing my own motorcycle. The absurdity of it was so profound it was almost funny. Almost. "Okay," I said, holding up my hands in a gesture of surrender. "Before you do that, I get a phone call, right? I'd like to make it now." Miller hesitated, surprised by my sudden compliance. "You can make a call from the station. The law says I'm entitled to a call," I said calmly. "I'd rather not have my wife find out I'm in jail from a stranger. I'd like to call my superior officer. Let him know my travel plans have been delayed." The phrase superior officer seemed to give him pause. Davis looked at him, nodding slightly. It was a reasonable request. Miller, probably wanting to look like he was still in control and following procedure, grunted his approval. "Fine. Make it quick. One call." I pulled out my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I scrolled through my contacts, past home, past Sarah, my heart aching with every name I passed. I found the one I was looking for. The screen read, "Top, Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne," my top. A man who had been in the army longer than I'd been alive. A man who had pulled me out of more than one fire, both literal and figurative. He was the rock of our unit that he answered on the second ring. His voice was a gravelly bark. "Thorne." "Top, it's me, it's Jake," I said, keeping my voice low. "Sergeant Miller," he said, his voice instantly softening, but only by a fraction. I could picture him in his office on base, paperwork piled high. "Where the hell are you? You were supposed to check in an hour ago. Sarah's been calling the family readiness line. She's worried. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. Sarah. Of course she was worried. I know. Top. I'm sorry. I've run into a bit of a problem. I looked at Officer Miller, who was watching me with a smug expression. I'm on the side of the road in a town called Heavenwood. The local police have pulled me over. Heavenwood, that's just up the road. What's the issue? Speeding. No. Top, I said, my voice flat. They seem to believe my motorcycle is stolen. They're planning on arresting me and impounding my bike. There was a moment of complete silence on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of a chair creaking as Top leaned back. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously quiet. Did you tell them who you are? I showed them my military ID with my license. It didn't seem to matter, and they are refusing to listen to reason. That's an understatement. Top, another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Top was a problem solver, and his men were his problems to solve. All right, Jake, he said, his voice now all business. Listen to me. Do not resist. Do not give them any reason to escalate. Be polite. Be respectful. You are a sergeant in the United States Army, and you will conduct yourself as such. Do you understand me? Crystal clear. Top, what's your exact location? I looked up at the street sign. I'm on Route 3, right at the intersection with Oak Street. Just past the town square, okay? Stay right there. We're on our way. Top, you don't need to, Sergeant. He cut me off, his voice like iron. Did I ask for your opinion on the matter? I said we're on our way. Just keep your head down and stay on this line with me. Don't hang up. Okay, Top, I said, a wave of something I couldn't quite name washing over me. Relief, maybe. Or maybe just the comfort of knowing that my family, my other family, had my back. I put the phone on speaker and set it on the seat of my bike. My master sergeant would like to stay on the line until this is resolved, I told the officers. Miller scoffed. He can stay on the line all the way to the county jail. He stepped forward again, more aggressive this time. All right, fun's over. Turn around. Hands behind your back. I wouldn't do that if I were you, officer. Top's voice crackled from the phone's tiny speaker. Miller froze, staring at the phone as if it had just insulted his mother. Who the hell is this? This is Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne. Top's voice boomed, clear and commanding even through the speaker. And the man you are about to harass is Sergeant Jake Miller of the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment. He has just returned from an 18-month combat deployment. He is on his way home to his wife and daughter, and right now, he is under my protection. Officer Miller looked at Officer Davis, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes for the first time. The 75th Ranger Regiment. The name carried weight. It wasn't just some random Army unit, but Miller's ego was too big to back down now. He'd come too far. I don't care if he's the damn president, he said, his voice tight. The bike is flagged as stolen. He's coming with us, son. Top's voice was low and gravelly, like stones grinding together. You are making a career-ending mistake right now. I am giving you one last chance to stand down. Let my soldier go, and we can all forget this happened. Is that a threat? Miller spat. It's a promise, Top said. Now, I've got things to do. We'll be there in 30 minutes. And the line went dead. 30 minutes. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. Miller stood there, his face flushed with anger and a bit of confusion. He looked at me, then at the phone, then at his partner. Davis just looked at the ground, shaking his head slowly. You think your Army buddies are going to come save you? Miller said with a forced laugh. What are they gonna do? Write me a strongly worded letter? I didn't say anything. I just leaned against my bike and waited. I knew Top, and I knew what he meant when he said, we're on our way. The next 30 minutes were the longest of my life. Longer than any firefight. Longer than any lonely night on watch. Miller paced back and forth, muttering to himself. Davis leaned against the patrol car, looking more and more miserable. The sun finally gave up and slipped below the horizon, plunging the street into a dusky twilight. The streetlights flickered on. A few cars drove by, their occupants slowing down to stare at the scene. To cops, a biker, and a whole lot of tension. Miller kept shooting glances down the road, as if he was daring someone to show up. He was trying to project confidence, but I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. The seed of doubt that Top had planted was starting to grow. Then I heard it. It wasn't loud at first. It was a low, deep thrumming, not a car engine. It was deeper, more powerful. A sound I knew intimately. It was the sound of heavy-duty military engines. Not one, but several. Davis heard it too. He stood up straight, his head cocked. "What is that?" Miller stopped pacing. He listened. The sound grew louder, a steady, ground-shaking hum that seemed to vibrate in my chest. It was getting closer. And then they came. At the far end of the street, two sets of headlights appeared. But they weren't normal headlights. They were high off the ground, wide-set, and menacing. They belonged to a pair of Humvees. They rolled into Heavenwood not with a roar, but with a quiet, unstoppable purpose. They weren't using sirens or lights. They didn't need to. Their presence alone was enough to bring the whole town to a standstill. Behind them was a larger vehicle, a 5-ton transport truck, the kind we use to move a full platoon. The small convoy rolled down the quiet street and pulled to a stop about 50 yards from us, forming a perfect, silent semicircle that blocked the entire road. The air brakes hissed, a sound that cut through the night like a knife. Officer Miller's jaw was on the ground. His face had gone from flushed red to a pasty white. He looked like a man who had brought a knife to a gunfight and had just realized. The other guy brought a tank. Then the doors of the Humvees opened. It was a sight I'd seen 1,000 times, but never here. Never on a quiet American street. Soldiers, not in their dress uniforms. They were in full operational camouflage, wearing plate carriers, helmets with night vision mounts, and thigh rigs. They moved with a fluid, disciplined grace that was both beautiful and terrifying to watch. They didn't shout. They didn't run. They disembarked and fanned out, creating a secure perimeter. Their rifles were held in the low ready position, not pointing at anyone, but ready. There were 20 of them, then 30. The back of the 5-ton truck dropped down with a loud bang, and more soldiers filed out, forming a second rank. In less than 2 minutes, the side of this sleepy road was occupied by what looked like a full combat platoon. My platoon. My men. The people of Heavenwood, the few who were out, had stopped in their tracks. A man walking his dog stood frozen, his pet cowering at his feet. A woman on her porch dropped her watering can. The world had stopped. From the lead Humvee, a figure emerged. He was taller than the rest, his shoulders broader. He wasn't wearing a helmet, just his patrol cap. He walked with an authority that needed no weapon to announce itself. Master Sergeant Marcus Thorne. Top. He strode past his men, his eyes fixed on our little group. He didn't look at me. His gaze was locked on Officer Miller. His face was a thunder cloud. He stopped about 10 feet away. For a moment, he just stood there, letting the sheer, overwhelming reality of the situation sink in. The only sounds were the idling engines of the military vehicles and the frantic thumping of what I was sure was Officer Miller's heart. "Officer Miller," Top said. His voice wasn't a yell, but it carried with absolute command. It was the voice that had sent us into harm's way and brought us back out again. "I am Master Sergeant Thorne." We spoke on the phone. Miller could only nod, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "I believe you have something that belongs to the U.S. Army," Top continued, his voice dangerously calm. "You have detained one of my NCOs without cause on the day he was meant to be reunited with his family. You have caused distress to his wife and child, and you have wasted my goddamn time." Davis, the older cop, took a hesitant step forward, his hands raised slightly. "Now, hold on a minute, Master Sergeant. We had a report. The computer flagged the vehicle." Top's head snapped towards him. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Officer, did the computer also tell you to disregard a man's military identification? Did it tell you to dismiss his service record? Did it tell you to treat a decorated combat veteran, a man who has bled for the very freedoms you're supposed to protect, like a piece of trash on the side of the road?" Davis wilted under the glare and stepped back. Top turned his attention back to Miller, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. "Here's what's going to happen now," Top said, ticking off points on his fingers. 1. you are going to hand Sergeant Miller his license and registration. 2. You are going to apologize to him for this unnecessary and unprofessional stop. 3. You and your partner are going to get in your car and leave. And 4. You are going to go back to your station and personally ensure that this bogus flag on my soldier's property is erased permanently. Am I making myself clear? Miller just stared. Speechless. I asked you a question, officer, Top barked, and Miller physically flinched. Yes, sir, crystal clear, sir, he stammered out, fumbling in his pocket for my papers. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely get them out. He stumbled forward and practically shoved them into my hand, his eyes wide with fear. The apology, Top prompted, his voice like ice. Miller looked at me. His face was a mess of shame and terror. I'm sorry, he mumbled, his eyes on the ground. It was a misunderstanding. Good, Top said, though he didn't look satisfied. He looked disgusted. He turned to me for the first time, and the hardness in his face melted away, replaced by a deep, genuine concern. You all right, Jake? I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. I was looking at him, but I was seeing all of them, all my brothers, Casey, Martinez, O'Connell, all the familiar faces, standing there in the twilight on a quiet street in a small town, ready to go to war for me. A wave of emotion so powerful it almost buckled my knees washed over me. After 18 months of feeling like I was on a different planet, of feeling disconnected from everything, in that moment, I felt a sense of belonging so fierce it hurt. Let's get you home, son, Top said, clapping me on the shoulder. He gave a sharp, almost imperceptible nod to his men. The whole process reversed itself with the same silent, terrifying efficiency. The soldiers turned, filed back into the vehicles, their boots making soft, rhythmic sounds on the pavement. The ramp on the truck closed, the doors of the Humvees shut. The 2 police officers were still standing there, frozen, like statues in a museum of bad decisions. As I swung my leg back over my Harley, my bike, the engine coughed to life with a satisfying roar. Top leaned in close. You follow us, he said. We'll give you an escort the rest of the way. Make sure there are no more misunderstandings. I nodded again, the lump in my throat finally starting to dissolve. I pulled out behind the convoy. The Humvees and the 5-ton truck rolled through the rest of Havenwood like a phantom parade. People peeked out of their windows, their faces filled with awe and confusion. The 20-mile drive to my house was the strangest of my life. I was surrounded by a cocoon of military steel, a rolling fortress of loyalty. The weight that had been on my shoulders, the exhaustion, the frustration, it all began to lift. We turned onto my street. It was a normal suburban street, with manicured lawns and basketball hoops in the driveways. The convoy slowed, and then, one by one, the vehicles pulled to the side of the road, engines idling. They weren't going to my house. They were just stopping, watching, making sure I got there. I pulled into my own driveway, and there it was. The light was on. The front door flew open. First Lily, just like I'd imagined. Her pigtails were gone. Her hair was longer, but it was her. She shot out of the house like a cannonball, Daddy. I was off the bike before the kickstand was fully down. I dropped to my knees on the grass, and she slammed into me, her little arms wrapping around my neck so tight I could barely breathe. I buried my face in her hair. It smelled like kids' shampoo and sunshine. It smelled like home. I held onto her, my whole body shaking with the force of my relief. The tears I had held back for so long finally came, hot and silent. Then Sarah was there, kneeling in front of me, her hands on my face, her own tears tracking paths through her makeup. She just looked at me, her eyes searching mine, as if she was trying to see the last 18 months in them. You're home, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I'm home, I managed to say, my voice cracking. We stayed like that for a long time, the 3 of us, a tangled mess of arms and legs and tears on our front lawn. A family putting itself back together. After a while, I looked up. Down the street, the convoy was still there, a silent, watchful presence. Top was standing outside his Humvee, just watching us. He saw me looking and gave a slow, deliberate nod, a sign of mission accomplished. Then, as quietly as they had arrived. They left, the engines turned over, and the convoy rolled away, disappearing around the corner, leaving behind only the quiet stillness of a peaceful evening. Sarah looked at me, her brow furrowed in confusion. What was all that? Who were they? I pulled her and Lily closer, breathing in the scent of them, the feel of them, the reality of them. I was home. The fight on the side of the road was over. All the fights were over, at least for now. That, I said, my voice thick with a gratitude so deep it felt like it was part of my soul. That was just family, making sure I got home safe.